So in today's video, we're going to be talking about inheritance. And on this slide, I created sort of a structure or a roadmap of the main topics or the subtopics relating to class inheritance, and that includes inheritance, subclasses and superclasses, method override, abstract classes, interfaces, and polymorphism. And I'm going to try to split this up into a couple different videos because again, this is a lot of new information to process, and for the sake of time, I want to split this video into different subsections where you can view these individual topics instead of just watching everything relating to inheritance in one 40-minute video. And so we can start here with inheritance, and what inheritance allows us to do is to specify that one class extends another. And so we see here in our declaration of a student class, public class student extends grade, with student being our subclass and grade being our parent or our superclass. And inheritance is basically when an object or a class or a subclass is based off of another object or a class, which is our superclass. So it's when a subclass is based off a superclass, and that subclass can inherit all the information from that superclass, therefore maintaining the same behavior and functionality of the class that it inherits. And a really easy way to think about inheritance is a subclass basically copies and pastes all the code from its superclass into that class. And so you can use all the methods and all the functionality and the behavior of that class. So again, objects of a subclass can inherit all the objects and the data types of that superclass. And we're able to pass a subclass to any constructor or method that expects a superclass. And so we take a look at that in our example right here with our public class student extends person. And so student is going to inherit all the functionality of the person class into its class. And so we take a look at this public void print full name method that expects an object type of person. And so what this method is going to do is it's going to retrieve the data fields from that person object necessary to print the full name. And what we're going to do here is we're going to create a student object with just student s is equal to new student. And the dots in the parentheses just means that whatever constructors or whatever parameters are expected within our constructor call. And then what we can do here is we can call this print full name method, but instead of passing a person object, we can pass a student object, which is s. And why we can do that is because we are inheriting all the information from the person class into that student class. So that student class basically becomes a person object or can act as one. And inheritance is typically a way that we can reuse pre-existing code. And it's why we use public within our classes. And we say here that a subclass basically just inherits all the public methods and class variables defined in the superclass. So we take a look at our example here with our with our public class person, and we create a private string name instance variable and a method called public string get name, which returns this instance variable name. And within our next class, we create a class called student, which extends the person. So this, again, the student, this is very repetitive, but the student is going to inherit all the information from the person class into that class. And so when we create a student object, we can call this getName method that's within the person class, because again, if you think about it, we're basically copy and pasting all the code from the person class and pasting it into our student class for the student class to use. So even if we didn't define a getName method, we can still access it because we're inheriting it from the person class. And just a quick little side note, if we create a student object and say s.name, that's going to give us an error because a subclass cannot inherit private methods and variables from our superclass. So it will not inherit those instances that you'll create. For example, private string name. And we're going to take a look at a really quick example and a really basic example that shows kind of how inheritance works again. So we have our class 1. This is just our 1 class. And we just had an instance variable private int x. And then we're going to create our constructor, and all it's going to do is it's going to set that variable that we created, and it's going to set it to 5. And then we're going to have our setX method, which is going to take a parameter of an int and call it num. And what this is going to do is it's going to set the value of our instance variable to the value that's passed through this method when it's called. And then our getX method is our accessor method, and it basically just returns x. And now we have our class 2 method, and we're just going to really quickly extends one, And in a main method, we can test the code, and we can just say 1 is equal to new 1, and that's basically creating an instance of the 1 class. And what we're going to do is we're going to print line, we're going to say system.out.println 1.getX, and our getX method returns the value of x, and our constructor is being called when we create this object because of our empty parameters. And so what's going to happen is when we say system.out.println 1.getX, it's obviously going to print out 5 because we're setting 5 to the value of x. But then when we create an object of the to instance class, we can say to2 is equal to new 2. That's funny to say. And then we can say 2.setX 3. And we can go ahead and print line out.println 2.getX, and that should print 3 because we're using the set method, which sets the value of our instance variable to whatever's passed in, which in this case is 3. And then we can go ahead and print out x. And the reason why you don't get an error here is, again, the to class is extending the 1 class and it's inheriting all the methods. So even if we don't define a setX method and a getX method within our to class, we can still use those methods. And again, we see that it prints out 5 and 3. So now we're going to look at some keywords that are really important when working with classes. And our first one, and our most basic one that we've been using for methods and classes up to this point, has been the public keyword. And any public object or member can be accessed by members of another class, which can be a subclass or a superclass or anything else. And we use public a lot because any class can inherit from a public class. On the other hand, if you have a private class, so if you have private class S, nothing can access that class because a private class will deny inheritance from any other class. And then we have the this key, and that refers to the object or the class that you are working in. So we can say this.toString method or this.x, which is could be our instance variable, is equal to 1524, or just an empty this, which calls our constructor that we created. And again, this refers to that class that you are working in. But then on the other hand, we have our super key, which refers to the parent or the superclass that you're working with and you are inheriting from. So we can say super.toString, which in a subclass will refer to the toString method of a parent class, and then again our super, which will access the parent constructor or the parent default constructor from the parent class, and then again another constructor call, which is super, and then we pass our parameters in, whatever they may be. But this can get confusing when you're working with method override, so we're going to take a look at that method override right now. So we created a class and we called it overriding example, and this is going to hold the main method so we can test our different classes. And what we're going to do here is we're just going to create a class and we're going to call it class animal, and we're going to create another class and call it class age. And so created 2 different classes there. And if we want to access different contents within these classes, we can use our main method to create those objects and then manipulate them. And what we're going to do here is we're going to create a string, we're going to call it animal, and we're going to set it equal to, it can be chimpanzee. Spelled that wrong. So chimpanzee. And then for our age, we can set an int age and call it 5. And what we can do here is we can create a method, and we can just say public void print stuff, takes empty parameters with our opening and closing braces, and we can just say system.out.println animal. And that's good. And then what we can do here is we can extend or inherit our animal class. And so up here we can create objects for our classes. So we can say animal is equal to new animal. Again, you can call it whatever you want. I just called it an animal because you really want to get in the habit of creating objects that that relate to the object that you're working with. So we wouldn't just say animal, like, I don't know, S is equal to new animal, because we wouldn't know what we were talking about if someone else was reviewing our code. And then we can create another object which is an instance of our age class, and we can just say age is equal to new age. And those are our two created objects. And then what we can do from here is we can access our public void print stuff method that we created. So we can say animal.printstuff, and we can put a print statement behind that. Actually, we don't even need one because our print stuff method already prints something out. So if we go ahead and run this, we can see that it says chimpanzee because obviously it's going to print out animal. What we can do here is we can say age.printstuff. And again, the printstuff method isn't within our age class, but because we're inheriting it from the animal class, it won't give us an error. And if we run that and see what it prints out, it'll print out chimpanzee again. And if we actually got rid of this extends animal right here, we would get an error on this on this call because it says the method printstuff is undefined for the type age. And so we'll go ahead and extend this again. Oops, can't type. Okay. And now what we can do is we can just, within this class, we can just add to this print statement and say super class. And then what we can do here is create another printstuff method. Just drag this down so you can see what we're doing. We're going to create another printstuff method, and all it's going to do is do the same thing, but it's going to print out subclass and our age. And you can maybe guess what's going to happen here, but this is basically what method overriding is. So we talked about how when you extend a class, you inherit all the methods and the instances that you create. But you can also override the original methods by implementing one with the same signature. So in this case, we have our printstuff method, which is the same thing as the printstuff method created here. But what's going to happen is this printstuff method is going to override this. So when we go ahead and print this, we'll see that it says superclass chimpanzee and subclass 5. And so we can go ahead and get rid of this extends animal method because we don't, even though it'll override, we don't need this printstuff method used in this class. And it'll still work. And so that's basically what method overriding is. And in the next video, we're going to be talking about abstract methods and interfaces. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Kazra.